All right, so again, in lesson 3 in module 7, we're talking about the existence of square roots and cube roots. And now we're going to get into how we can use those to help us solve for an unknown, a variable. So it says find the positive value of x that makes each equation true. So again, remember I kind of mentioned that in the last video. There's going to be actually, when you're squaring things, not cubing things, there's a positive and a negative solution. But we're only going to be concerned with the positive solution right now. Okay, so what's the first thing I need to do here? Well, remember, I'm solving for x. So what do I need to get rid of? I need to get rid of that little 2. I need to get rid of that squared part there. So I'm going to take the square root because taking the square root undoes squaring something. So take the square root of both sides. Because again, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Okay? So solving the equation, here's my equation. Now remember, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. So squaring and taking the square root undo each other. Okay, so if I'm at 5 and I square it, I'm at 25. If I take the square root of 25, I'm back to 5, right? So squaring and taking the square root undo each other. So this just becomes x, and then what number times itself equals 169? Again, you can use a calculator, and you can get the answer, in that case, is 13. And again, only the positive answer. All right? If it asks you to check your answer, it's really quick and easy. Basically, I'm plugging 13 in for x. Is 13 squared equal to 169? Well, 13 to the second power is 169. So, yes. Okay. All right. A couple more examples here. Now notice this one's more of a word problem. It says a square-shaped park. A square-shaped park. So square means all the sides are the same. So I know that that means that this side here and this side here are both the same number. So I'm going to use x. You can use whatever you want. And it's giving us the area. Well, remember, the area formula is length times width, or in this case, x times x. When you have two x's to go to the first power, that's x squared. So basically, the area, no, let me draw it here. The area formula equals 324. So a square-shaped park has an area of 324. Okay, so we want to figure out what are the dimensions. Well, they're going to be the same, so we really just need to figure out what x is. So how do I undo squaring something? I take the square root. Whatever I do to one side, got to do to the other. Okay, and we left with x equals 18. Oops, ignore that one. Now, it doesn't say to check it here, but if I wanted to check it, I'd take 18 and plug it in for x. 18 squared. Does that equal 324? It does. So before you even turn it in to be corrected, you know if you have the right solution. Okay? And it's yards. All right, now number 3 here just gives us the equation. We're solving for x. That's our unknown number. It's not a letter. It's a symbol representing a number. So how do we undo squaring something? Well, we take the square root. Does it matter that it's on the right side? No. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Okay? And you take the square root of 625. Except you type it in correctly and then take the square root and you get 25. So 25 equals x. Okay? Or you could, if you're more comfortable writing x equals 25. I personally don't care. Okay? All right, so that has been some problems with our square root, and we're probably a little more familiar with squaring things than we are cubing things. But take a look at this next example. It says a cube has a volume of 27 inches. Okay, so if we take 2-dimension and make it a 3-dimension, now we're going from like squaring to cubing, right? From area to volume. We're talking about capacity, how much something holds. But if it's a cube, again, all the sides have to be the same. So if I want to find volume of a cube, I would go length times width times height. But it's a cube, so they're all the same. So it basically ends up being x times x times x. Or x to the third. Okay, so our volume equals 27 cubic inches. So x to the third equals 27 cubic inches. So I want to know what x is, so I have to undo cubing something. So remember, that means we're going to take the cube root. Sorry about that. So remember, the cube root symbol looks just like the radical square root symbol, except we put a little 3 there. This means we're taking the cube root instead of the square root. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. Okay? And again, guys, this is just working out to be x, but what we're meaning is what number times itself 3 times is equal to 27. There's a cube root button on your calculator. I can show you how to use that. Okay, the calculator, unfortunately, I have here. We don't have just the cube root button. There's something else you can use. Okay. You can always, I don't advise guessing and checking, it'll take too long. But if I'm looking at this, I kind of know, hey, 27, 3, right? 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 is 27. So x is equal to 3. 3 inches. So 3 inches by 3 inches by 3 inches. All right, just a couple more examples. What positive value, because again, this is a squaring problem, we know there's positive and negative solutions, but what positive value of x makes the equation true? Now notice down here, number 6, I kind of want to show you guys these together. This one says what positive value of x makes the following equation true. Looks the same thing, except there's a little 2 here and a little 3 here. An exponent of 2 squaring, exponent of 3 cubing. So when we go to solve these equations, we don't necessarily do them different than we've been doing. You just got to pay attention. Don't just assume it's a 2. A lot of times we do that. We default to a square root. Okay, so when I do this, how do I undo squaring something? Well, I take the square root of it. And when I take the square root of something, of both sides, remember what I'm saying is what number times itself equals 64? 8. Okay, 8 times 8, 8 squared is equal to 64. Okay, and again, you could always check it. If you take 8 and plug it in for x here, does 8 squared equal 64? It does, okay? But now down here, it's a cube, it's cubed, right, to the third power. So how do we undo cubing something? Well, we take the cube root. And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And so what we're saying here is what number times itself 3 times, okay? And in this case, it's going to be a 4, okay? Because 4 times 4 times 4 equals 64. Hopefully that was right number 4s. Okay, but you can always check it. Okay, so if you're in like the situation I am where I can't necessarily show you exactly on a calculator how to do it, you could always check it. I think it's 4. Well, then you go 4 to the third power in your calculator, 4 raised to the third, right? And you get 64. So I know I'm right. All right, the last couple things we want to do here is what happens when we start getting these, like, I don't want you to stress about this part, but we got to bring back exponents that we did at the beginning of the year, okay? So what if you were given something like this? X to the second power, x squared, equals 25 to the negative first power. Well, focus on this negative 1 here. Think back to when we were working with exponents. Remember, if we have a negative exponent, we can take the reciprocal and drop the negative. So 25 to the negative first power is actually 1 over 25. So this ends up being x squared equals 1 over 25. All right, that's great, except we still haven't solved for x. So remember, if I want to solve for x, I have to undo squaring it, and that's taking the square root. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Okay, so we know squaring and taking the square root undoes each other. But this right here, what number times itself equals 1 over 25? If you can't figure that out, here's a hint. Take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. What number times itself equals 1? 1. What number times itself equals 25? 5. And you can write it like this, or you can write it as 5 to the negative 1 and put it back kind of how it started, right? There's a 1 here. Take the reciprocal and add the negative back in. Not too concerned about this part. If you can get here, we're good. All right, so let's apply that to this equation. We have x squared equals, well, if I have a negative exponent, remember I can put a 1 on the bottom, take the reciprocal and drop the negative. So this becomes, sorry, I didn't like my 2 right here, 1 over 256. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's take the square root because I'm squaring it and I undo that by taking the square root. So this gives me x equals, and I really can't necessarily see what fraction times itself would be 1 over 256, but I know I can do the square root of 1 over the square root of 256. What is the square root of 1? What number times itself equals 1? 1. Square root of 256? I can do that right here. And it's 16. So this would be 1/16. Or, again, if you're comfortable, you can write it as 16 to the negative first. I don't really care for that, or care either way. Now remember, we can apply these to cube roots as well. So, I can take this 343 to the negative 1. Now working with a cube root right here, and I can write this as 1 over 343. Make that 3 not look like an exponent. Just to the first power, so I don't write anything. Now I'm going to take the cube root. What is a cube root of x cubed? Well, it's just x. And then the same rules apply here, right? I can take the cube root of 1 over the cube root of 343. Okay? What number times itself 3 times equals 1? 1 times 1 times 1. This is just 1. And this one right here, 343. Okay, let me clear my calculator here. 343. Nope, I did that the wrong way. Never mind. Oops, sorry. I was trying to remember how to do it real quick. So if I go, nope. Trust me on this one. What number times itself 3 times? Show me your calculator. If you bring your calculator to me, I'll show it to you how to do it. It ends up being 7. Okay? Again, I can check this, right? By saying, well, does 1/7 to the 3rd power equal, well, I'm going to write this as 1 over 343. Well, this is 3 to the 1st, remember exponent rules, over 7 to the 3rd. Now I can do that on my calculator. 343. Okay, so I know this does work. All right, guys, thank you for being patient with me as I showed you all this. Real quick, very last one. Do not panic when you're solving an equation and you see that there's x squared there. What are you solving for? You're solving for x. What do you got to get rid of first? In this case, it's at -4. It's always adding or subtracting first. How do I undo minusing 4? Well, I add 4. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. You bring down your x to the 2nd power. Double check to make sure those are opposites. 5 plus 4 is 9. Now, how do we undo squaring? Because I want to get down to x. Well, we take the square root. And we're left with x equals, what number times itself equals 9? 3. Don't panic when you see an x squared. Use your solving equation skills that you have. All right, so again, the focus of this lesson is on squaring and square roots. And bring me your calculator and I'll show you how to use it if you don't know.